no challenge, poses a greater threat to future generations than climate change. 2014 was the planet's warmest year on record. 14 of the 15 warmest years on record have all fallen in the first 15 years of this century. And the best scientists in the world are all telling us that our activities are changing the climate. The Pentagon says that climate change poses immediate risks to our national security. We should act like it.
Welcome to Climate Change, a Global Reality. I'm John King. Thanks for sharing your time with us. We've got a great group on hand this evening to discuss this critical issue, but let's begin with a definition. Climate change. That refers to any significant change in the measures of climate that lasts for an extended period of time. In other words, climate change includes major changes in the temperature, precipitation, or wind patterns, among other things, that occur over several decades or longer. That's a definition to get us started. Holly Bamford, let me start with you. From a government perspective, the research perspective, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration perspective, what does that mean? Make it real for the people watching that definition. Does that mean sea levels going up a little bit, the temperatures going up a little bit?
Right. I think that's a good definition to start with, because people confuse sometimes weather with climate. And they like to say, oh, well, the weather today doesn't mean that the climate's changing. So I think you have to look at it from a very long-term perspective, decadal, century perspective. And that's what we do at NOAA. And I think the reason why we have to care is one word, and that's impacts. The impacts that we see as a community, the impacts we see to the environment, and the impacts to the economy that we depend on.
Straight up front, answer the naysayers. Answer the person who says this is somehow cyclical, this is not man-made, the science is phooey.
Right. No, when you look at the trends, we are seeing, for example, the oceans are getting more acidic. The sea is rising around the country and in the Gulf. The droughts are continuing, and we're seeing some heat waves. So if these aren't little spikes, when you actually look at the long-term trends, scientifically, we're seeing changes in ocean conditions and climate conditions. But I think the more important thing, in terms of talking to anybody about it, is not necessarily why it's changing, but what it's actually doing, and what are those impacts we see as a community. To give you a perfect example, back in the 80s, we saw about 2 storms that cost this country $1 billion. Today, we're seeing double digits. And even when you normalize that dollar, the consumer price index, you were seeing double-digit billion-dollar disasters in this country caused by climate and weather events. As a country, we can't afford billion-dollar disasters. We have to think about prevention and putting money into protecting communities for the future.
It's a great big picture to start there. Dr. Mark Mitchell, you work in the public health sector, including being part of a pioneering study of healthcare professionals. From that study and your work, what's the headline? What is the single biggest impact on public health? Is it one particular illness, one particular ailment?
George Mason University and the National Medical Association did a study, a nationwide study of African American physicians in the National Medical Association, and we found that 88% of them are seeing health effects, and the effects are very, very different, and this is across the country. The number one issue that they're seeing is 88% are seeing injury from severe weather, which was quite a surprise to us. And they're seeing it from different severe weather in different parts of the country. So, for example, on the West Coast, we're seeing inhalation of wildfire, of fumes from the wildfires, and also from dust that's blowing from the drought. In the East, we're seeing a lot more snow and injuries from backaches and shoveling more snow. In the Midwest, from the floods, and getting the water out. But we're also seeing a lot of other types of things. We see the things that you expect, like the allergies increasing, the seasons are increasing, the number of people with allergies, and our physicians are complaining. So we're also seeing asthma from mold and also from air pollution. We're seeing increases in chronic disease, such as, if you have a pre-existing cardiovascular or respiratory disease. We're saying, more than 80% of our physicians are saying increases in that. They're saying that they didn't see that 10 years ago.